Let's get connected.
Neighborhood Connect.
Paul Young here with Joyce Cox. We'd like to thank you all for listening to Neighborhood Connect. Vice President of Client and External Relations for Universal Commercial.
Proud to be a part of this podcast.
Neighborhood Connect.
You always get enlightened, inspired, and then, there's no more inspiring and enlightening place than Memphis, Tennessee.
Neighborhood Connect.
Welcome back to Neighborhood Connect. We're here on the podcast tour in Frayser, Tennessee.
Yes, we are. And Director, we have two of the best representatives of Frayser, Mr. Charlie Caswell and Steve Lockwood.
I'm really excited about today's conversation. Frayser has been on the map for the last few years. A lot of great things happening in this neighborhood and community. And so excited to hear what is making the magic happen in this neighborhood.
Honey, you better believe it. Well, let me just say this. Frayser, Tennessee is the what? Bomb diggity.
That it is.
Keeping it real, right, and funky.
I think one of the things that makes a difference is having an African-American man who leads as the executive editor. I'm always about this girl power. One of the other things we've been talking about is youth and their interaction with the justice system.
Funky politics on the Kudzukian Network.
Kudzukian.
Welcome back to Neighborhood Connect, the podcast tour. We're here in Frayser. I'm your host, Paul Young, and with me I have
Miss Joyce Cox.
And we are here with an exciting group today.
Yes.
Right now we have two leaders in the Frayser community that we get to work with on a regular basis. Mr. Charlie Caswell, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
As well as Steve Lockwood.
Thank you. Good
welcome.
to be here.
Thank you all for being here.
Yes. Well, Paul, today this is one of our podcast tours, and we wanted to come to the great Frayser, Tennessee.
So something is happening in
Frayser.
Yes. I keep hearing about Frayser. I know we're doing a lot of work, but as I go out in communities and neighborhoods, I hear people say, I want to do X, Y, and Z like Frayser.
Exactly.
I want to organize like Frayser. I want activity like Frayser. So what's happening up here?
Well, it's been a while in coming. Charlie and I both been here a long time, and we really have. I've worked here 17 years, and it's only been the last several years where I've said this neighborhood really is rebounding in a way that's really obvious. Housing values are up, home ownership is up, interest in the neighborhood is up. On a whole nother level, we've known that we had some real problems on the educational level, and there's a real renaissance on the educational level. If you talk to law enforcement, they'll tell you that while we still have problems, there's improvement on that. Again, Charlie knows, is more involved in that than I am. On a number of fronts, to sum it up, this place is a civic beehive. And it's really kind of working.
Yeah. And when I think about Frayser, I think about resilience. It's the toughness of the people, like stakeholders like Steve and others that are Pastor DeAndre Brown, Ricky Floyd, and other leaders who have really taken the bull by the horn and said that, hey, this is our community. We're not going to wait on government. We're going to wait on anybody to bring about change. And I think that's what's have the movement of people seeing that collective impact. And so when I think about Frayser, I just think about a community of unity. Every family, let me say, have its differences, but yet Frayser know how to get in our argument, but come back to reality. Yeah.
Some years ago, I remember, Charlie, we attended a Neighborhoods USA conference, and one of the sessions was how to put the neighbor back into the hood.
Yeah.
And to me, it's of my opinion that's something that you kind of took and ran with it. So tell us how that affected you.
Yeah, it most definitely did. I again, thanking the city of Memphis for investing in me. So the people who know my story don't know it was about 6 months before that I had just got my GED, right? At 30 years old, to go back to get my GED and then to have the next week to be going with people like you, to have lunch with the President Bill Clinton in Little Rock. So having that type of experience, tell anybody that's in our community that, hey, if you're willing to invest in yourself and invest in your community, community, change can come. And so being able to come back here and understand that it's all about the resources and people that's already here that's doing the work, that you just reach out and begin to build those partnerships. And when I seen, we had people like Steve Lockwood and others that's doing the work, we just said, hey, let's come together in any capacity. And it's been great to see infant mortality at that time. It was so high in our community that we were able to get that from 16.9 every 1,000 child dying in our community to under 9.9, working with these community partners. That was something that I learned through that training that we can do once we start working together.
I love what you're saying, because when I think about community development, I try to think about it holistically, because it doesn't matter if you build a pretty house if the people inside the house can't thrive. And I think here in Frayser, you guys have that focus. So let's dig in a little bit in your respective agencies and some of the things that you are doing. So Steve, just starting with you, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do here at Frayser CDC?
Well, we're primarily house fixers and house builders. That's our nuts and bolts day to day. We have acquired several hundred really blighted houses and turned them into the best houses on the block. And, we're not academics, but one thing we've done is kind of studied what the effect, when you take the worst house, we don't acquire houses that need a paint job. Yeah. We're acquired, our favorite thing is to get houses free from somebody who's really neglected it and really put some work into it, and it changes the values in the neighborhood for 500 feet in all directions. That's not new for us. Funding sources come and go. We concentrate on one area or another. We are just, again, concentrating in what we call the MLK zone. And speaking of all the different players, we really have been given funding in order to enhance the neighborhood around MLK Prep, formerly Frayser High School, just to, to really improve the atmosphere and the educational atmosphere in that territory. Additionally, and I told you this when you walked in the door, we're just finally starting to build 10 new houses. We'll probably build 30. But we see other people already starting to follow us in here, so there's other new building going on here. Our role here really is not just to build houses, but to be as encouraging and as open as we can to any forms of positive new investment, not just of money, but of energy and time. As I've said, there's a school renaissance, all manner of other folks working in here. Agape's in here working, doing what they do. And it's exciting really to see. When I got here in 2002, it felt a little lonely. Right. It doesn't feel lonely anymore.
It's all about collaboration.
That's right. Collaboration. And you guys have those creative signs that I've seen around town where you talk about why rent for $700 and when you can own for $480.
Well, let me talk for a moment about the Homeownership Campaign, because until 2 years ago, we could not sell houses in Frayser to owner occupants. And I found that out from talking to a realtor who just said, if I list a house, I don't even bother to take it to a homeowner. I just sell it to an investor. And the light bulb went on for us. And we started a campaign to sell houses, not just our houses, but all of the neighborhood's houses. And we worked with lenders who for a long time would not lend here. We now have about probably 10 preferred lenders. We have a special website, which is FrayserHomes.com, that you can go in and find lenders that we think are particularly friendly, not just to Frayser, but neighborhoods like Frayser. So if you're selling a house or working in Whitehaven or Nutbush or any other place like that, that list would be good for you. And we have dramatically changed the number of owner occupants buying in the neighborhood. We went from an average of 4 per month to 10 per month as a result of our campaign. And those billboards have been good, right?
That's great. Yeah.
Well, in another life, I used to be your Choto analyst. Yay, Frayser.
I hadn't forgotten it.
And I am so proud of the work that you guys are doing in the community, housing development, and a little commercial. You want to tell us?
A little bit commercial.
Yeah.
We, besides this building that we're in, and of course we're in the brand new Triumph Bank Community Room. We don't even have the plaque up yet, but that's what it is. And we've done some across the street, but we have some new commercial that we have just purchased on a pretty vacant section of Watkins, and really just like our housing work. The idea is not just to buy 3 storefronts and put a tenant in there, but the idea is to transform that block by being a catalyst for that work. We do not have a tenant selected yet, but that territory needs work. About 10,000 cars a day go by there. There's commerce there. There's potential there, and we want to be a catalyst for that territory. So stay tuned for that.
That's awesome. Well, Charlie, I want to bring you in here. You've been doing a lot of work for a long time in this neighborhood and community. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, what's 3V, and tell us a little bit about that.
Again, 3V is from a book I wrote, How to Become More Visible, Vocal, and Valuable to Your Community, which came out of the work and working with stakeholders here in the Frayser community over the many years, and that we understand that how the three things that we understand from 3V Leader is how to communicate, how to collaborate, and how to connect with the police, the pastors, the politicians, the parents, the principals, the proprietors, and the partners, which we say are the 7 Ps to help bring unity in our community. And so taking that work has pretty much expanded. As I understood that Steve Lockwood is the genius behind housing, that was not my forte. What we understand, even from a perspective of being a pastor, that we are the house, the people, and that if we're not built up on a good foundation, we're going to tie down whatever house we build up. And so understanding that and getting to the deep root cause of the work that we do is focusing on adverse childhood experience and traumatic experience that youth, our children, and many of the parents who have never had that trauma addressed as a child, how do we help build resilience in them? How do we connect them to resources? How do we create a new norm for them? And so now taking that work really citywide, working with our schools and police officers and others to really make that impact is what we've been focused on. We've been able to successfully, with a partnership with Old Island Police Station, formerly Colonel James Kirkwood, now Gregory Sanders, and District Attorney Office Amy Wyrick, and Juvenile Court, to bring a community prosecutor into our police station, that we've been able to help educate them around adverse childhood experience. So we, in 2016 and before, seen 700 plus kids every year going to juvenile for the top 10 incidents right here in Raleigh-Frayser alone, 700 and some kids. Well, from 2017-18, we went down to under 250 kids, almost a 78% decrease in juveniles being arrested, and they was being referred to alternative programs, to the Pursuit of God, the Husband Institute, Pastor DeAndre Brown doing the Junior Blight Patrol, and the programs that I provide, 3V Leader, working with the schools. So in the and what Juvenile Court is doing with some of the mentors in the community. So all of that collective work is what we believe is bringing about real change that make people, again, want to invest in their property and living into this community. So.
You're listening to Neighborhood Connect. We are here in the Frayser community, and we are having a great conversation here with Charlie Caswell and Steve Lockwood. Joyce, turn it to you for the next question.
Well, I just wanted you to kind of go into when you say adverse childhood experiences, what does that mean?
So adverse childhood experience is any traumatic experience that a child experienced before their 18th birthday, any physical abuse, neglect, domestic abuse, a child that's living in a household with a person that's mentally ill or going to prison. What that does is it affects the neurodevelopment of the child brain. We all understand the science behind the early age of 0 to 3 and how 80% of the brain is development. But many people don't understand the science around even at an adolescent in 15 to 16, their brains is like sponges and soaking up. So to be involved in even a community now in the science and research and evidence from 1996 when the Center for Disease Control originally did. So that's not the CDC we are, but that is a national organization that's federally funded to support the research and science around health outcomes. And they did this in California with Kaiser Permanente, and they took 17,500 individuals and researched them who 80% of were middle-class white individuals and asked them those 10 questions, which I just shared about physical abuse, neglect, and so forth. And they seen that those that had 4 or more traumatic experience was 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. They were 60 to 70% more likely to use drugs and alcohol. They was 50% or more likely to separate and live in single-family households because of what happened to them as a child. And so to be able to get people to understand that science, and I just say this and bring to an end, is to think about adverse childhood experiences, to think about lead in the water. It affects the neurodevelopment of the brain, the same thing that lead in the water does. But this is something that people don't see. And so I'm glad to be working with people like Dr. Althea Stewart at the University of Tennessee, who is heading up and putting in place a youth assessment center that now say, let's not just lock our children up. Let's get them the assessments they need. Let's put in the a structure that they never had before, because they come from these parent households who were traumatized as children. And I just say this, and just to understand this science even further, is that it goes back to even the historical trauma we went through. So when you understand, you come out of households that come out of, that's been enslaved, that been through Reconstruction, that been through civil rights, it's not what's wrong with the people, it's what happened to the people. So to understand the diverse childhood experience is changing the language from what's wrong to what happened.
So it sounds like a holistic approach.
And Joyce, if I could add, we've always known that you don't transform a community just through housing and physical work. And, communities like Frayser, it's pretty obvious, but it still needs to be said and addressed. It requires special attention. And unless we have people doing that kind of work, helping young people, we can't do the housing work we do. And all the other kind of work that other folks are doing there is not going to be successful. So it's so gratifying to see, a much more holistic approach coming at this neighborhood.
So from a city perspective, it's so encouraging to see what you guys are doing, because we go into neighborhoods all across the city, and one of the common refrains that I hear from people is, the city's not doing enough in our neighborhood, and who's going to come over here and fix this? And the issue that I try to explain to them is that the city is never going to come in and build those things that you want to see. We have to have partners that are actually taking on the physical development. We have to have partners that are committed to working with the people and the families and organizing. And so what you guys are doing is exactly what I think communities across the city can learn from. So I kind of started with this, but I want to hear a little bit more. What's happening here that drove you all to build these types of collaborations? Because there are a lot of players. You mentioned a few of them, but there are many more that have been working in this neighborhood collaboratively. There are always issues, but it seems like you all always figure out a way to keep the end goal in mind. So what are you guys doing to make that happen?
Well, go ahead. What do you want me to go ahead, Steve? Well, I just say too, what the city did invest. When the city invested the time and people like me to take me to NUSA conference to see how other cities and communities was. You had people then willing to come out of their silos and begin to work together. Again, people don't do what they don't know. And so if you give them the knowledge and they understand that collective impact in us working together will bring about that change, people would do it. And so that what I seen that begin to help us, the knowledge.
Great.
I think one thing is that for all of the bad reputation that Frayser had, it still had a lot of strengths. It still had a lot of brand loyalty. It still had a lot of people that wanted to be here. One of the things that we've proven is that if you build nice houses, people will live in them. We also have rental houses, and we stay at about 99% occupied, which sometimes surprises people. The other thing I'd say is on the communication level. The communication piece in a neighborhood is really hard. It's really challenging. And there's a number of great things that have happened communication-wise, from plans to et cetera. But the truth is, I give a lot of credit to the Frayser Exchange Club. Because there is this place, and you all know this, but many from outside the neighborhood don't know that weekly, I don't know. What do you think, Charlie? 60 people on average get together and simply communicate. They converse, and they stand up and they say, here's what I'm doing. And Girls Inc. stands up and says, here's what we got going on. And Lifeline of Success stand. I do the same thing with housing. Here's what's going on with housing. Just that forum that is non-threatening. And you tell me another neighborhood that has that forum. I give an awful lot of credit to Shelley Rice for having created that, or at least built it in a way that's been so positive for all of us to learn how to. It's not easy for us to get along necessarily, and one of the many slogans that I've got here is that in neighborhood work, you don't get to choose your partners.
Right.
They're there, and you have to learn to live with them, and you have to learn to agree and disagree. And we've built communication here, and it's had ups and downs, but we've done it.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times I think you stay focused on what's the common denominator.
You bet.
And that's the neighborhood. Yeah. My grandfather always told us, and I tell this story. I'm an only child. but he would always make us all come together, all the grandchildren, and make up a bed. And I was like, well, I'll do it by myself. And he said, no, many hands make your load light. And all this, he was teaching us how to work together. You may not agree on everything, but the common denominator was the bed.
Well, we've learned how to support each other.
Yeah.
We've learned
Right.
how important it is. And I just recently to Pastor Ricky Pete said, I'm so grateful to you because
Ricky Floyd.
I'm so sorry. He got me there. Pastor Floyd at Pursuit of God.
Yeah.
It's as of late he's been standing up and saying, "Man, the work that Frayser CDC has been so important for this neighborhood." And he's doing incredible work himself, but understanding that we have to support each other
Right.
and help each other and prop each other up has been a great learning experience.
Yeah, and I just say for me, even when I was pastoring Union Grove Baptist Church, and right behind my church there was a community that was it was in chaos from the first work that I began to do as a community development corporation with Rangeline. But when Steve Lockwood took over some houses right behind the church and began to renovate those houses and fix those houses, we took a total flip. I went from sitting in the church at night hearing gunshot to basically not hearing nothing. We seen crime go down. We seen the tax base go increase. Even when I went to get some work done on the church, the bank even gave us a high appraisal because so it impacts everything to have those type of relationships and partnerships. So I thank him for helping me with that loan by doing them houses behind our church. So yeah.
Well, this is why we wanted to come to the neighborhood. We wanted to hear these stories and be in the space. And so I want to close on just this final question to both of you. What's next for Frayser? Tell us what's happening and what you guys are working on that people can expect to see in the short term.
Well, I just say what's next for Frayser is more unity. I think the people in Frayser understand that we're not just going for a piece of the pie. We're asking for the whole pie. And so to have that type of focus as a whole coming together, I think that it brings about the change. So I see even bigger and greater things happening in Frayser. But those who are looking for the Frayser Change Club is every Thursday at 12 o'clock, 2025 Clifton Street.
And anybody's welcome.
Everybody, come see how it's done.
Yeah, and you can get lunch for $5 if you want, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
Paul, I would say, I'm sort of development centric, of course. I see a couple of important things going on, and the first one really is in relation to the city's, almost completed 3.0 plan. The central mantra of that plan was build up, not out, which is a way of saying increased density. And this neighborhood is really poised to be a key partner in that. We have a lot of vacant land. We're starting to have new building going on. We're 6 minutes from downtown. We're right on the biggest highway in the country. And we haven't taken full advantage of that. And in terms of building up, not out, we're ready to be helpful as part of that plan. And I think that that's going to happen. As a corollary to that, I'm expecting some major redevelopment on some of our gateways. And we have high hopes that on the Hollywood Gateway at I-40, there's not a single business here located because the I-40 is there with, 20,000 cars a day going by. And I think that's going to be different in a couple of years. And the same on the Watkins Gateway, which is really where people form their opinions about this neighborhood. And it's not always the right opinion. What you see as you come in Hollywood is not constructive, but that's going to change. So I think in the next handful of years, we're going to see, just like the rest of the city, we're going to see a lot of new building going on.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you all for participating, and thanks everyone for listening. You're listening to Neighborhood Connect. We're here on the podcast tour, igniting the power of everyday people to create an extraordinary world right where they live. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Appreciate y'all coming out.
Let's get connected.
Neighborhood Connect.
I am the Soulsville, USA site director through Community Lift, and I focus on the Neighborhood Association.
I'll let you say it because I would have messed that up.
Neighborhood Connect.
1% of the capital improvement budget every year is allocated specifically to the development of public art.
Neighborhood Connect.
Neighborhood Connect.
Here in Kudzukian.
We're here with Neighborhood Connect in Frayser, Tennessee on the podcast tour, and we've had a great conversation today sitting with Charlie Caswell and Steve Lockwood and the amazing things happening in this neighborhood and community. I think it's instructive for the whole city and actually neighborhoods across the country.
It has been a pleasure. We've learned a lot today. And just talking about what's going on in the Frayser community. Well, Frayser, Tennessee, anyway.
Everything from adverse childhood experiences. I couldn't get that out. Adverse childhood experiences to development to community organizing, the Frayser Exchange Club. There's so much happening in this neighborhood that I didn't even know about.
Yeah, well, we see that it does take a holistic approach to neighborhood redevelopment, and this is the example, I think, Paul.
This is a great example, and we hope that many communities are going to be able to learn from today's show, and we look forward to catching everyone next time. You've been listening to the Neighborhood Connect podcast tour, igniting the power of everyday people to create an extraordinary world right where they live.
Neighborhood Connect, produced and hosted by Paul Young and Joyce Cox with the City of Memphis Housing Community Development. Neighborhood Connect, produced, recorded, and distributed by Kudzukian.